Hi, my name is Terry Wickham. I'm the writer, director, producer of the movie Double Vision, Devil's Five, Gruesome Threesome, and the upcoming brutal horror film Beginning of the End. I have a review that I'm going to be doing today of a really fantastic book written by Steve Rosen called Tonechaser: Understanding My 26-Year Journey with Edward Van Halen. Steve Rosen, publisher. This book is an epic tale of friendship that features one of the most well-known guitar players in the history of music. Writer Steve Rosen has a long history of covering guitar players for various publications dating back to the early 70s. He's finally released his long in-gestation tome about his friendship with Edward Van Halen. Tonechaser: Understanding My 26-Year Journey with Edward Van Halen chronicles the incredible highs and lows from the peaks and valleys Rosen experienced as a friend of enigmatic genius of a guitar player, Edward Van Halen. Rosen was one of the lucky ones who befriended the late Mr. Van Halen back at the beginning of the guitarist's historic run with the Van Halen. Their start as friends began organically and was not manufactured as some people would assume based on the guitarist's popularity. What is most important, even crucial to the dynamic of their bond, was that when two people are friends, it must happen from both sides. In other words, he couldn't force Van Halen to like him and vice versa. But after reading this book, it's very obvious they both cared deeply about each other the way good friends do. I believe everyone on earth can relate to the feeling of warmth when two people have a camaraderie as friends. It is at these times in this book that their relationship really stands out about how meaningful they were to each other. What is so great about this published work is that we learn so much about Eddie Van Halen through their story. Though I've been listening to Van Halen since their legendary debut album came out back in 1978, there were many things I did not know about Eddie Van Halen, such as his perspective on life, his attitude towards understanding people. Rosen uncovers those deep personal traits because of the considerable time he spent with Van Halen at his house. Rosen going to Edward's house, his studio 5150, the many times they drove in cars together, airplanes, concerts, NAMM shows, and more. This book really opened my eyes to the challenges the guitarist faced within the band, namely the immature actions of David Lee Roth, difficulties with producer Ted Templeman, even a little bit of the musical frustration he had from the musical timidness from bassist Michael Anthony. We also learned a little bit about Van Halen's relationship with his ex-wife Valerie Bertinelli, and later his son Wolfgang, and how his son dramatically changed his priorities. What I admire most about Rosen's writing style is he tells the story with heartfelt emotion, but he's not afraid to be self-effacing. His ability to do this displays a man who is comfortable in his own skin and does not need to fabricate anything for attention or even readership. Rosen simply relays the times he spent with his friend Edward, and you've got to appreciate he has the courage and wherewithal to let the narrative speak for itself. He accomplishes by transcribing tapes he had recorded on simple cassette tapes over the time they were together. Rosen said he had not listened to most of these tapes since he had recorded them, which sparks all sorts of emotional, moving memories. This approach makes it fascinating on multiple levels because you get not only the history of Edward Van Halen, but his iconic band and interactions he had with people within the music industry like Ritchie Blackmore, ZZ Top's Billy Gibbons. The other thing that really stood out to me about this book, and it's something that I guesstimated even before reading it, was the overall negative effect that drinking and drug use affected Edward Van Halen. I need to make it clear that Rosen does not attack or bash Edward Van Halen about this. Rosen is smart enough to realize the historic value of relaying the darker aspects within his interaction with Eddie and is not afraid to tell the truth. That is a fine line to walk because people are going to make their own conclusions based on what they think, even from Rosen's words, and that is very admirable in my opinion. It's obvious throughout the book, Rosen is always respectful in regards to talking about his friend, but it also resonates that he's not afraid to tell the whole story. I'm incredibly grateful I had the opportunity to read this book. I gained a better understanding of Edward Van Halen. This knowledge and Rosen's keen observations makes me appreciate Keen Edward, as many call him, even more than the treasure his bountiful music gives all of us to this day.